then I'll start, and I'll start by thanking Jim Kostiva and Paul Gutman for calling in. I think since this is just U of M at the moment, there's no introduction required. Hopefully Rich and Carol will be able to keep up with us. I guess the first thing I'll ask is, you've seen the draft agenda. I always start with the draft agenda. And are there any immediate questions from Paul and Jim? Anything that you see here that we need to cover in our 30 minutes? No?
I'm just seeing, so the letter from Rich Mike to MyAPA, is this related to, oh, that looks like it's more specific to, is an NFP. I don't know what that is.
Let me take you there.
But is
keep
it
talking, and I'll take.
I'm more interested. How do we prep up and prepare or move toward, that working group effort, that apparently is getting sort of getting put off until the February. Was it a MyAPA board meeting in February?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, it's not that far away. I'm just wondering whether or not, what kind of prep can be done, should be done for that.
Well, my answer is that it's true. That's not far away. When I heard Tim say that they weren't going to deal with it until February, in my space, the regulatory space, with things changing by the hour, waiting until February, it seemed long to me. But at the moment, given that our industry is basically taken out of commission between Thanksgiving and the last of January, at least our industry is. The rest of the world continues to move apace. That's not so bad. At first, it troubled me that it would take that long, but in any case, that's true. So this here was meant specifically to deal with what Rich needs out of me. If you recall in that meeting that we were dealing with trying to get MyAPA to this is one of the, I'm still working on our website here, but if you recall, Rich at the ANSI meeting, remember, he had said that, and we made this presentation to the senior facility officers, but this was separate. There were two issues that were brought up. One, and I'm hoping we're waiting for this to come up here. Okay, so this was the teleconference with the NFPA, so this lets other people know that we're on the level, and I have some movement. I'm working with NEMA, or soon be working with NEMA on it. I'm trying to see where I placed that. So if you recall the presentation, hopefully that's not it there either. Two parts to our presentation had to do with this project, which was the State of Michigan Code, and also getting a contribution by the facilities officers. So they are separate issues, and I'm easily breaking off the State of Michigan issue. What I really should say here is that it's the second item here, and the reason I mentioned this here is that you had made the observation that there's another user owner final fiduciary interest here, and to what degree do we start? So this could be actually related to down here, which is where I'm asking the question. There's a fair amount of activity in the Michigan construction media. It is one of our larger industries, of course, and I usually have no trouble getting published in those documents, in those publications, or even on their blogs. So what I thought before we do that, we would talk a little bit about this is the letter that Carol will be taking out. Carol will be listening to this. She did receive this morning, and I believe Paul's, just so you know, Jim, Paul is on, or at least is on our Office of Institutional Equities board. Could you, since you're on the phone, Paul, could you brief Jim on what your role is with when you work with Carol and that particular organization within U of M?
It's not the Office of Institutional Equities board. The two groups that I do sit on is the University's Council for Disability Concerns.
Is that different?
And that's just,
University Council for Disability Concerns? Okay, I'm listening. Go ahead.
and I'm also on the FaceApp Advisory Board too, but that doesn't really have anything to do with disability issues. That's more has to do with the direction that FaceApp is taking.
Right.
But the Council for Disability Concerns, I became interested in it because there's so much of the work that Construction Services does, not only support people that are coming onto campus either as students or researchers or guests that require some reasonable accommodations. So my group does a number of reasonable accommodation type projects. But the flip side to that is a lot of the work we also do, students and visitors and researchers and staff and faculty from doing their regular jobs. So I wanted to have just a little bit keener insight to some of the challenges of people with disabilities. Because, we really, as, I mean, there are times that we put up barriers that are really great for people that don't have disabilities and really cause problems for people that do have disabilities. So I've been on that council for about 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we know that some of the what I'll call parent legislation comes from the ADA laws, and I don't always have the name of them specifically on the tip of my tongue. This letter is nearly identical to all the other letters that we have sent. When somebody was going to go to a board, in fact, I even say that, we've made 3 presentations now to the electrical, plumbing, and elevator advisory boards. And we simply use the public input session. At the end of every one of these, there's a public comment session or open mic, so to say. And this is the period that we use to acclimate the board members about what we're trying to do. So this is my philosophy of working from the ground up and try to bring out any points, rubbing points, so to say, that we think we can smooth out, and also to elicit other ideas. And then as I approached this, then Rich, this is a bit of history for you, Paul. Rich then approached Jim Costiva's office, knowing that this could be very politically sensitive, of course, that everything we do, pardon me, everything we do is politically sensitive. So we approached this carefully, but consistently and steadily, and in what we hope is appropriate measures. So Carol's has offered to go and visit the group on Friday. She'll have this letter with her. If she wants to make modifications, she still has a chance to finish that. And so that's the action item we have. That's a significant one. And I also wanted to, so that's this particular board. We know that there's 2 other boards that are meeting before the end of this calendar year. And my hope is that I could, we've actually made a presentation to the plumbing board.
Okay.
It's the boiler group.
Can I access that letter or take a look at that?
Sure.
Or review that?
Yep, it's right there. You should be able to, on your screen, are you able to, you should be able to download it. If you don't.
Okay.
And I believe I even sent it to you, if I'm not mistaken.
You
I think
sent me notices on, let's see, this was on DOE NOPR, commercial waste heating equipment.
Yeah, no, I think at the letter I sent you at about 9 o'clock, Jim, at the bottom of that there should be this, and I can commiserate if you get attachments stripped off, because I've often had that trouble with Google Mail, but you should be able to see this right now. Do you see it? Are you able to get it?
Just a second, I gotta get.
Okay, so while you do that, then I, in the interest of time here, let me go farther up the agenda here. And so since we've already made a presentation to the plumbing board, we'll be doing this one on Friday. It's the boiler rules. I had tried to get this done with our colleagues at Michigan State. There's not enough high enough level support for this at Michigan State, despite the fact that Michigan State is basically 3 miles away from the office where all this has to be done. It's an organizational issue, and so we may be on our own here, or of course we could start reaching out. Now, MyAppa might be able to do something. We might be able to do something, and it's likely that we may have to, U of M may have to consider whether, if MyAppa said, well, this is well enough known, we don't want to get into space. There's a lot of political reasons why the MyAppa executive board or the organization may not want to participate in regulatory reinvention as far as the construction code is concerned. So leaving that aside, then we're left with other allies here, and this is your recommendation, Jim.
Yeah, but absent MyAppa coming, if MyAppa and the other university-based schools aren't prepared to commit any time, energy, attention to this, and to undertaking this effort, it'd be darn hard for us to reach out to K-12s and say, join in a half-hearted effort that apparently is only, has the attention and interest of one university.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's likely you won't be one university, but you may. One option is that one possibility is that it may be a minority of them, and I'm very comfortable in that space. We know. Mm-hmm. Are you able to hear me? I just moved my microphone a bit.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. So this is where U of M's. I like to use my example of the dancing guy, where people will not be front forward, but they're willing to follow you, and that tends to be the temperament of MyAppa generally, with the exception of 1 or 2 universities. So, yeah, I hear you, and I take it very seriously. We can't have you out there alone, but we know that also we would not be where we are at right here had we not acted alone. Okay, if you come through here, we have a very significant portfolio of accomplishments. There's no question, and none of them they'll be there to reap the benefits from it, but they won't be there to contribute, either for political policy reasons or they don't have the resources. So when you talk about wanting to be the leaders and the best, and I have my degrees from here, I have 34 years here, I don't doubt that there's ambivalence about being the leaders and the best. I've been to Harvard, Georgia Tech, Michigan State, and U of M, so I know the culture of the organization. But I've been able to use that knowledge to leverage what we think are very significant disruptive changes to our cost structures. So that much said, I do take this seriously. We haven't crossed that bridge yet. We may have to be very incremental because of the temperament of the MyAppa, just because of the tendency to want to move together, which means that you don't move at the necessary speed. So, and I understand that too. God knows that I took 9 to 12 years to get some rather significant changes done in the National Electrical Code. So I don't have any shortage of credentials as far as patience goes. Okay, so we have this. Okay, so this is at the moment going to be our front forward landing page. I'm going to be developing this. Those of you who have followed the way our web's presence has developed will know that we started out with Times Roman here. This is where basically a full year's worth of work. We have quite a bit of background information here, but so I'm going to use this as at least a gathering point. But we're going to have a much more elaborate website set up for just this issue, because I know we're going to have to deal with many different constituencies. This is essentially a blog, but it allows us to keep track of how quickly things move. And if you go through here, you'll see we're doing things on many fronts on a near daily basis now, thanks to the support of Rich and others, and that recognition of our effectiveness underlied the reason why ANSI wanted to come here. Which leads me to another item which is on the agenda, not on the agenda. It has to do with the idea we're going to become a full ANSI member. If you recall, you might not have been in those discussions that U of M will become a full ANSI member, but that we're going to begin approaching the faculty on becoming an ANSI standards developing organization, and that might reach into some of your area also. And that's likely to be another track that might need a different project number, but essentially what we're asking the faculty, and it would be the business school, the law school, the engineering school, the public policy, and the urban planning institute school, do you want to have your faculty engaged in global standards development? A lot of the, for example, a lot of the cities and energy infrastructure, a lot of that is being now managed at an international level now. It's done so much now that the Department of Energy has essentially retained Georgia Tech to become the United States representative in the global standards development in the energy space. And you will find also that there's only one other university, I believe, that's applying for accreditation as a standards developer, and it is, I believe it's George Mason University Medical School. Is there a medical school? Maybe it's Boston. Whatever the case, I'm going to probably set that up as a separate issue, but it's important, Jim, because now we're getting outside of the facility area and using the same ANSI accredited processes to help, number one, U of M faculty become more politically visible and to get research dollars based on the fact that they established a global lexicon and vocabulary for different types of technologies. So that's a major step for the university. And I will tell you that if you want to use my expertise and the fact that we've invested in this for nearly 20 years now, it's time to do it now, because what you saw in October is just the leading edge of a larger global movement to rewrite technical standards and to redirect research money to other places where the vocabulary is being set. So it's a much larger discussion, and I'll set it as separate and brief you on it. And Paul, obviously you're welcome to do it. You're welcome to be involved in that. But that one basically rolls out global standards engagement to the faculty. And we actually have a date set up, May 20th, as a prospective date for doing a rollout. And ANSI would come out again in May and discuss, May 20th, discuss with the faculty, the 5 deans, what this means to them and what this means to their rankings, international rankings. So, okay, so this is, I guess this is the target area here, and for the moment, we may need to talk a little bit about how you approach them. Do we continue at the pace we're at, which is we move it along an hour or two every month? Or do we want to start approaching the legislature in this office? And that's something we don't do without you, Jim, or your office.
Right. Well, you know, as I've said, there is little appetite to have University of Michigan approaching this effort on its own, you know, without a demonstration of some unified support amongst other similarly situated institutions.
Mm-hmm. What about the adjacent states? If you look at the way we have, laid out, this was templated last year, and we've been meeting on this since May of this year, actually. And I have to give credit, Paul, if I haven't given you credit here, it was Paul's observation about a year ago that our electrical board was not, there needed to be changes, and we actually had a meeting with them. I think, when was it, October 29th, Paul, or was it maybe it was September 30th? Was that when we met with Irwin and his colleague?
I believe it was on Friday the 30th.
Yeah, okay, right. So that was the time this board was supposed to meet, but they decided to give us some time. In any case, so we had nearly, I would say, an hour, maybe an hour and a half discussion, and there's an understanding there at that level that something needs to be changed. Do you want to I'm not sure if you ever had a chance to describe that. This is probably a good time to describe, Paul, to Jim and to Carol what your experience was there on September 30th.
Well, you know, Mike, I don't want to sidetrack this discussion, but I think that we are kind of getting away from Jim's point, which is the strategy to approach the state coming at it with a single university without getting support support from other institutions and maybe even a better level of support from the prisons and the K-12s. If it's just the university, we're going to have a much more difficult time of affecting change than if we get people with similar interests to join us in this effort. So, you know, I'm not really sure how much of the change we're going to be able to affect if it seems very self-serving to just be changed.
As a lone wolf, too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you understand, of course, that the lone wolf never got us these things here, Jim.
Right. Yeah.
We came in as a lone wolf.
Yes.
Now everybody benefits from them. Everybody
Right.
benefits from them, but nobody wanted to be out there, which is the beauty of what I think is our strategy and our management. All these things happened because we were the lone wolf. Now, as best I could, I tried to get APA and MyAPA, but they're going on a different track where they want to control everything in a different way. That we can talk about that discussion offline, but it simply won't work. And I think the fact that it's not working for them is pretty much displayed just in the past few months, and we have these accomplishments to show. So the lone wolf argument is a fair one. It's one we have to take seriously, but you understand that from the standpoint of from the governor's office, it's not just this industry. It's going to be other industries that have what we'll call the user owner or the final fiduciary, that interest, which has to reconcile the concern for safety and the concern for the safety of the balance sheet. And that's what dealing with barrier-free, and that strikes me that this is one of the more sensitive ones area here, because there are so many you know, who can possibly be against safety. That's how it usually starts. Or you start to look like you know, you're not sympathetic to the handicapped. I'll state my credentials that I was a person who voted in favor of making electrical outlets more accessible to physically limited, mobility limited individuals. But no one will see that credential. But I'll show you my vote on that. So, getting back to Paul said, we can't do anything alone, and I get that. But remember, none of everything we did happened because we had full support. We might have had 50% support, maybe 80, sometimes 30, and we had 30% support. We still got it because we were technically right.
Right, Mike. But I want to correct you. I didn't say that we can't do it alone. I'm wondering the wisdom of our strategy, our effectiveness in affecting change by doing it alone, as opposed to trying to get colleagues and other interested parties who would benefit to join us in this effort. I just see it as being a much more difficult, much more time and resource consuming effort because of the approach that we might choose to take. Not saying that it's a bad approach. I'm just wondering if there might be a better approach.
Well, I'll put it out there. Suppose it's not. MyAPA has what, 14 main universities that are under the state charter, and then there's a number of others. Suppose it's just us and, say, Northern Michigan University. Is that sufficient? Because MyAPA, the organization, remember that organization has a different imperative, which I've discussed. They follow along the APA National Gathering Place model, which really puts standards advocacy at quite a distance for the reasons having to do with sponsorship and the economic health of the organization as a gathering place. So the gathering place model doesn't really fit here. So if I were to say, Jim, we got Wayne State, Northern Michigan University, and Western to support us, they'll go in so the four of us go in. MyAPA, the organization, will not be able to support it, but there's four. And I will also say that in these other states, for example, Indiana, up here, at least I've done some research here. We know what's going on in Indiana. We'll say, well, other states have done that. That's the reason I put these other states up here, is that we have some precedent in these other states for doing exactly what we're trying to do. It's just that it's not here because we're a very labor-oriented state.
Mm-hmm. there also exists the present ability for, if we do have other individuals both at the university, beyond Carol's involvement with with that board, we do have the ability to have individuals at either U of M or other supportive institutions, if we can find some of those individuals to submit their names for existing appointments to those other boards to begin to, for some of the general public positions on those boards, to start getting user advocate representation.
Right, and that's
an action we can continue and constantly continue to pursue.
That's right, and my takeaway, and I'm glad you mentioned that for Paul, and Carol can hear some follow-up on this. I'm just getting this so I can edit this. We still need to revisit. You're running out of time, Paul?
Oh, I said that was Jim that made that comment.
Yeah, no.
Paul.
Okay, I'm sorry. We have to continually do that. The statement that came out of the MyAPA meeting in, let's see, it wasn't the one we had here. It was the one, what was the last conference I was at? I was at Mackinac. I was in Mackinac in August, I believe. That statement, the observation is there, nobody has any spare capacity within any of those within those organizations to deal with to deal with this. There is nobody can afford to have their person tied up for 8 hours a month. That's where we left it, and that's why we're thinking of other models. So actually, that's why I put your notes here, Jim.
Yeah. Well, I mean that just there's these are people are making short-term trade-off decisions then, apparently, because if there's long-term cost savings that are possibly at stake here, then facility managers and others are sounds like they're comfortable trading off. Let's keep that person here, for those 8 hours, as opposed to trying to advocate for long-term cost savings at a meeting in Lansing. And then it seems like people are expecting a miracle from above, or to make these changes. If they're not prepared, if other folks aren't prepared to make a commitment to spend some time to put together facts and figures and build a coalition, it isn't going to happen without a measure of broad collective advocacy.
Right, and that's why the volunteer model fails, which is related to the gathering-based model. We've got to pay people to do this. That's my thought.
Mm-hmm.
I got to get the money so we can pay people to do it. And that's how the other interests do it. When I go to an NEC meeting and I'm dealing with somebody from the manufacturer's insurance or labor, I'm dealing with a very highly paid person. And those industries know that they're getting 100,000 to 1 or 100 to 1 payoff by having that person there. I'm offering our industry 100,000 to 1 pay, and they still don't get it.
Yeah.
And we can put all these accomplishments in front of them, but this is the fundamental character of the public sector, and of the public sector, the education industry in the public sector, and the education facilities industry in the education industry in the public sector. So it's deeply embedded. There are ways to break through that. So that's a different discussion, but it is always good to remind everybody, and this is why it's helpful to have people like Carol going to the meetings so they can acclimate themselves to the atmospherics up there in Lansing.
Right.
So we can't say we haven't made success. We've had 4 people approach the state of Michigan DLEG in the past. If we do a retrospective on the year, we will have had we have had 4 people in a year approach the state of Michigan, and they already know. Paul, I think you can vouch for this, that Irwin is very familiar with our. Just to follow up, Paul, do you have a minute or so before we close here to explain to Jim and to Carol what the outcome of that meeting was on September 30th?
Well, I mean, the basic outcome was that my interest, which was changing the inspection requirement being a dollar level was more a process-based approach, so that certain things would require permitting and certain things. But he wasn't in favor of an indexed dollar figure above which electrical inspections would be required.
Yeah. Okay. So, but there's a recognition that right now what's written in the electrical law is not appropriate in his judgment and needs to be fixed. Did I summarize that correctly?
One more time.
It sounded like he wasn't. He's not in favor of making a change.
Well, he's in favor. He said that he knew the change was inevitable, and that if his people didn't start reevaluating the way that they were required, the standard was being written, that somebody was going to come knocking on his door and ask to have it changed.
Okay.
So he does recognize that the standard that they're adhering to right now is antiquated, needs to be redone. He just wasn't in favor of Paul's way of doing it.
Yeah.
So again, Jim, nobody else, no MIAPA institution approached them.
Mm-hmm.
This was us. This is us going in alone and saying we think we need to make a change right here. You're able to see this, right? This is the genesis of what started this about a year and a half ago with Paul, and being electrical. I'm sensitive to this, but also as soon as I started talking to Dave Flint over in the elevator board, he's got the same issue. And then you talk to Bob Bellerhurst over at Michigan State, and he's saying, I got the same problem over at the boiler, in our boiler laws. A lot of them have to do with labor. This is essentially a labor-centric rule, and so we have to be careful as we approach labor. So in any case, I bring that up is that, yeah, he was. I'll summarize it by saying he's sympathetic, at least as far as the electrical board goes, and the only, Paul referred to somebody's going to make a change that's going to get done. If we're lucky, they'll do it themselves. That's really the thing that ought to happen. But we don't think they're going to, they will be able to do that themselves, and that's why we need this. So looks like I want to make sure I've got your restatement. If you saw, Jim, I put it in red to make sure that we do get that.
Okay.
And but that. So for the moment, we can make some progress here this week. I'll start to queue up a landing page for that ANSI accreditation. Now the DOE thing, that's a separate thing. I wanted to let you know. I'll send you a copy of the letter whenever I wanted to acclimate you to the fact that we may be sending a copy to Fred Upton's office.
Well, that's where I want to make sure that we run that through government relations here before we start sending letters to congressmen.
Yeah, okay, well, send it to DOE because that's normal, but if we send that, we'll get the letter because the deadline's on Friday, but whether we copy him on it, that's the one. So, Jim, that's why I drew you into that discussion.
Yeah, but that didn't give me any, I appreciate that, but I just don't have that doesn't give me enough background, or
Okay.
And what's the specific objective here, and what are we potentially informing the congressman of?
Yeah, well, this is we had a teleconference on this last week, and this is what they want in energy conservation status for water heaters. It is important because it's about $100 million to $1 billion cost issue for us, so that's why it hit my radar, and I'll bring it up to. So whether or not we copy congressmen, because in some cases we may need to do this, and we don't do it this time, but just be aware that this comes at us hourly. And I've known you for 6 months, and I give you one that that hits our radar, and I want you to be aware of it. I will not move. I will not move with haste, with patience. So, okay, and I think if I go back to our next, so hopefully Carol will have a chance to listen to this. Seems to me I just lost my spot on the agenda here, and I think I set up the next teleconference. I can adjust this as required, but I think I set up the next one for December 17th, at which point we can have Carol's report, and possibly we'll have, I'll let Dave Flint and Terry's our new representative on the elevator board. Now, whether or not we approach the media, let's wait another month on that. We'll wait another month. So how does this time slot look for you guys? 3 to 3:30, December 17th?
Gosh, I'm not sure. Let me take a look.
This is what I do so I don't have to pester people.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm actually scheduled to be in federal district court in Detroit today. So I'd much rather meet with you, but unless general counsel can resolve an issue, I might be in downtown Detroit. My guess is that it won't be, so I would put me down as a tentative yes.
Okay. So what I'm going to do here, and I'll put Carol, I'm going to copy all the others on this one, and when we get a little closer to there, let's Flint, and I won't belabor everybody through this. I think what I'll do is I'll just stop it right there, and thank you for your time. Is there anything else here? Jim, I'm going to preserve all your, this is our notes from the last teleconference.
Right.
There's a lot of issues here. Yeah, and we did invite ANSI out for next, at least we have a time slot. We didn't invite him yet, but we have time slots for May 20th and for November 14th of next year. So I'm bringing you up to date on that one. So in any case, I'm very grateful for your time and insight, gentlemen.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Take care, Michael.
Thank you.